Today I have a very special guest. Some people may say that the world is full of two kinds of people: doers and complainers. Doers and complainers. And my guest this evening, today, is someone you might consider a doer. This is someone who has his own podcast, has had his own podcast for years, called Welcome to the Midside, where they discuss culture, current events, politics, and a bunch of other fun stuff. Also, about a year ago, almost a year ago, in 2 days, he published a novel. This is my guest today has been a loud advocate for the Release the Snyder Cut, the Zack Snyder cut of the Justice League. So much so that a year ago he published a novel called The Cut, which you can find on Amazon, which was inspired by Zack Snyder's struggle with directing the Justice League. Kirk Maniacs, please make some noise for my guest today, Justin M. Lesneski. How's it going?
It's great. I thought your setup was there are two types of people in the world, doers and complainers, and our guest today is both, is what I thought you were going to say.
I would never do you like that. If you consider yourself both, then maybe we can have that argument.
It's kind of the Adam Carolla thing where it's Adam Carolla used to have a bit, what can't Adam complain about? And then Adam Carolla is kind of like one of my spirit animals, my spirit people. So it's kind of like that. Like if I wanted to, I could find something to complain about with anything, but I try not to, right? Because I try to look on the good side of life and to celebrate life and enjoy life.
So the reason why I reached out, why I decided to bring Justin on today is because a few weeks ago, I got a request from one of my patrons to look at this video from the channel Wisecrack, which, as you can see, has over 3 million subscribers. This video in particular has almost 200,000 views. It was uploaded a few weeks ago, October 25th. And they ask whether or not they make the argument that Eric Cartman is an Ayn Rand hero. And the reason why I brought you on today, Justin, because I don't know you that well, but there's 3 things I do know about you. 1, you're a fan of Ayn Rand. 2, you're a fan of South Park. And 3, you love to talk about art. Am I correct on all those 3?
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Yeah.
A few weeks ago, Justin sent me this amazing essay he wrote called Zack Snyder Laughed. And I'll be honest, Justin, you have inspired me to take a new look. You've changed the way I thought about the Zack Snyder Justice League trilogy to the point where I am curious enough that I want to eventually binge it again. And I will be linking to all of Justin's stuff when I get this on YouTube. So again, if you have not checked out Justin's stuff yet, the Midside Podcast, which you can find on Apple Podcasts.
I appreciate that. And what you just said is why I love talking about art and why I love going at it from this angle. Because look, when you have a video like this that hits 200K people, right, you have to wonder, how many minds does it change? And I don't think it changes a lot. So to me, it's not about how many listeners I have, how many viewers I have. It's about making those real connections where somebody goes, hey, you actually made me think about it, and I want to go back and look at it a little differently. And maybe we can do that with South Park today too, because as you've noted, I'm a huge South Park fan. I've seen every episode. I've watched it from the beginning. I would say it shaped a lot of who I am. It responded to who I am. It then again reinforced and pushed me in different directions. So I think South Park is a very important cultural icon.
I have seen all but one episode of South Park. It's the 200th episode. And the reason why is because, for those who don't know, the 200th episode was they were trying to bring all of the characters from South Park into like some 2-part series, two-parter episode, which included, I think part 2 included the Prophet Muhammad, that they were trying to dress up as a bear. And it only aired once, and I missed that one airing, and I've not been able to find. Yeah, so that's the one episode I have not watched. But yeah, I've actually watched it since I was a kid. And it's funny, when I was turning 13, the movie South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut was in theaters. And I really wanted to see it in theaters. And I convinced my dad to let me see it. And he actually took me to the movie theater. paid for my ticket and gave me some change and said, when the movie's over, find a payphone and I'll come pick you up. And the person at the theater was like, you can't let him go in there by himself. If he's going to watch the movie, you have to go in with him. And my dad ended up buying a ticket for himself and coming in with me, which was really funny because if you've seen that movie, you'll know like the first scene is the kids going to see the Terrence and Phillip movie, and they won't let them in the theater without an adult. And I've always been amused by that tidbit. And I've never seen my dad laugh that hard in his entire life. But
well, I'm glad your dad went, but that's part of why South Park is so brilliant, right? I mean, the scene is, we'll take 3 tickets to see Terrence and Phillip Asses of Fire, please.
Yeah.
No. And it's so brilliant because they literally predicted what would happen in reality with their own movie. Like Terrence and Phillip are commentaries on themselves. TP, Trey Parker, Matt Stone. Those characters stand in for themselves. So that's just how brilliant they are. And how brilliant that is, I mean, blame Canada, cancel Canada. How does that still resonate today?
It's amazing. I still think that movie holds up, especially when talking about cancel culture and political correctness and all that crap. Bogenhagen says, man, I just saw the Wisecrack video. What a load of bunk when it came to Ayn Rand. I think this is I think this means it's time for us to really get into this. We're going to watch a few minutes and then jump ahead. So let's check this out. Again, this is from Wisecrack.
Let's start with Cartman's mission statement.
Whatever, I do what I want.
In a nutshell, this can be understood as meaning I don't care about any values other than my own self-interest. I only act upon my own.
All right, Justin, do you notice a problem here already?
Well, I noticed several problems. First of all, that's not Cartman's mission statement. That is simply Cartman parodying shows like Sally Jesse Raphael. And he was making fun of, South Park was making fun of those kind of talk shows that were very popular at the time, right? Jerry Springer was very popular. And they would bring on these young women to be nice to them, who clearly came from poor upbringings. And I don't mean poor as in economics, although they could be, but I mean they weren't raised well. So they didn't make good decisions and they possibly had psychological issues. So that's the first thing. It's confusing a parody for some sort of overall philosophical statement by Cartman. And also the idea that him doing what he wants is pursuing his self-interest. As if in the moment, if you do immediately what your emotions or physical desires or animalistic desires tell you, that is self-interest. Self-interest requires some sort of long-term perspective and a perspective to be able to look at reality as well, not just simply saying, oh, I feel like doing that, I do what I want.
You're goddamn right.
Selfish desires.
Whatever, I ran for Congress and won. Then I had sex with an intern, killed her, and hit her body.
This slogan then first appears to be expressing a form of nihilism.
All right, then we're gonna have to eat butters.
The belief in nothing, that life has no essential meaning, and that there is no ultimate basis for things like goodness or truth or knowledge. The argument would go, Cartman is a nihilist because he believes in nothing, except for himself.
Except for himself. Isn't that a bit of a contradiction if he's rejecting nihilism, which is the rejection of morals and values altogether, but he also values himself in some superficial sense? Isn't, like, on paper, isn't this a contradiction?
It's not nihilism. It's definitionally, if nihilism is the belief in nothing, and then you say, oh, but he believes in himself, well, then it's not nihilism. You can't be like, oh, he likes peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, except when there's jelly. Then you don't like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Like, you're going against the basic definition. It's absolutely ridiculous. And like, what I wonder is how many people turned off the video at that point. How many people turned off the video? Because when I watched it, I scrolled down and there was a comment and somebody said, Cartman isn't a nihilist, he's a narcissist. And I think that's something we'll see coming back over and over again in this video, is the idea of narcissism versus self-interest and how so many people confuse them.
Yeah, in a recent video I did, tell me if I'm wrong, I think narcissism is somewhat of a package deal, and that it packages selfishness with second-handedness. with it's a very superficial sense of selfishness. Like what is good is the praise of others, the admiration of others, the fact that I'm above others by some sense, whether it be I have more money than others, whether I'm more famous than others, whether or not I've achieved some like status that others don't have.
I think that's a good definition of it. Actually, I'd never thought of it quite in that way, but the idea of package dealing and bringing together selfishness and second-handedness. And I would also put in there maybe an element of hedonism or emotionalism, because it's not just that, you know, it's all about me and I'm better than other people. It's all about me and I'm better than reality. Whatever I most desire in this moment has to happen. And it doesn't matter, you know, it doesn't matter if there's 3 cars to the right of me on the highway. I'm the most important person. I need to get off the road. That's a hedonistic or an emotionalistic reaction there. So I love that. I would just add hedonism or emotionalism to that package.
And as Ayn Rand once said, a creative man is motivated.
Motivated.
Excuse me. Ayn Rand once said, motivated by the desire to achieve, not the desire to beat others.
Right.
And he can do this precisely because there is no external set of moral or ethical values outside of his own ego. We're not the first people to have this thought. In fact, a personality test website did an analysis of fictional characters and deemed Cartman the 8th most nihilistic character of all time.
And this is another part, I think we talked about this a little bit. The fact that South Park it's a show that does not really have much continuity with the characters. It does and it doesn't. It's not like a Game of Thrones or a Breaking Bad where there's very complex, long drawn out, deliberate character development where characters have different arcs and come into conflict with one another. South Park is often philosophical and has messages in small little bites. And especially when you look at the early days of South Park, you take the character like Randy Marsh, who in like the first season, he's like a serious adult. And then eventually he just becomes a wacky over the top character.
Well, right. And Stan originally used to throw up on Wendy every time he saw her, and Kenny used to die all the time, and they got rid of that. What you have to realize is the characters were created to fill certain roles and stories. They weren't created to have arcs. They weren't created to have long form storytelling. Cartman represents he represents emotionalist right-wingism, emotionalist republicanism. That's what he is. It's the idea of, I mean, Cartman, right? That's Cartman is what became a Trump supporter, right? It's, you know, they took our jobs, right? It's this over-the-top racism that's ascribed to everyone who is not a leftist nowadays. That's what Cartman is. But then you look at a survey like this that, first of all, I want to know, like, who is this guy's source, right? He's like, oh, somebody said that he's the 8th most nihilistic character, right? Okay, who are these people who are saying that? And then look at the rest of the list here. You have Cartman next to the alien from Alien. What standards are we using here? So an alien who kills everyone. What?
I didn't pick up on that at first. That's a nice catch.
Well, and then there's something even better here, right? So Agent Smith, we can probably argue from the Matrix, is a nihilist. He's probably the closest to a nihilist on here. Although he is, right, as we see in the third Matrix movie, he is an operative of the machines and the programs, and there was, a whole like unity of all of the species and everything. So even he's probably arguably not a nihilist. And then here's the best part. Dr. House. Dr. House is a nihilist. Dr. House, who he values solving puzzles and curing diseases. The whole point of House was it's not about the people for him, it's about curing the diseases. And they call him a nihilist. Based on that, I would reject this entire list. They don't even understand the people they have listed on here.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I wonder who they have number 1. Oddly enough, the Joker, usually when I think nihilism, I think the Joker, where is he? I think, yeah, he's number 19 from the Dark Knight.
Number 19. You could argue the Joker values destruction, which is a value in itself. But especially if you look at Nolan's Joker in The Dark Knight Returns, right? The Dark Knight Rises. That's not nihilism in there. And it's ridiculous. I can't.
This video put you out of words. So ridiculous.
This list put me out of words. Doesn't she have a relationship in the show?
Yeah, she loves Andy. I would say you could say she's maybe a cynic, but not a nihilist.
Right, exactly. It's just that's the problem. These people trade in these surface level understanding of these words, and you end up with a list where the alien from Alien, Agent Smith, Cartman, April Ludgate, and Dr. House are all on the same list. There should never be a list where all those characters are together.
Vogger says Guilfoyle from Silicon Valley is at the top. I've never watched Silicon Valley, so I can't really share an educated opinion on whether or not they should be at top. But
Guilfoyle calls himself a Guilfoyle calls himself a nihilist. So he's self-described, but he does really value. I don't remember the character's name, played by Kumail Nanjiani, but he does really enjoy pissing that guy off and messing with him. So I don't know how much of a nihilist he is in practice.
Fictional characters and deemed Cartman the 8th most nihilistic character of all time. And to anyone who's ever seen an episode of South Park, this would probably seem to track. Cartman is rampantly greedy. He's pathologically selfish. In fact, he often appears to be completely unable to empathize with other humans. He has no understanding of the concept of guilt.
I didn't feel bad before, but now I just feel terrible. You just feel bad for yourself that you're in detention. Right.
He also has no ability to tell the difference between being nice and just putting on a nice sweater.
That's not being nice. That's just putting on a nice sweater. I don't understand the difference.
At one point, he buys an entire theme park for $1 million just to keep everyone else out.
So much to do at Cartman Land.
Because he was tired of all the lines.
I mean, it is a little second-handed what he did, right? But again, this guy's missing, he's missing the jokes and everything, and he's using the jokes to make jokes, right? I mean, the thing that's ridiculous to me, right, is he goes, Cartman is a nihilist, and then he shows him only eating the skins off of the chicken, right? There's literally an image of that, which shows he values the skins over the chicken, right? And then it shows him in money. So he calls him a nihilist and then shows 2 images directly after that show he's not a nihilist.
Yeah, it's just insane.
But you can't come.
Obviously, Cartman is also prolifically racist.
This is another big key. He's racist, which he is, but I'm eventually gonna come back to this.
Right.
His anti-Semitism is particularly prominent and consistent. He's also all of the other bad things. Sexist.
I would never let a woman kick my ass. If she tried anything, I'd be like, ah,
Can you pause it for a second? I'm sorry, when I first watched this video, when you sent it to me, when the guy said all of the other bad things, and then he was like, he's sexist and he's racist. And I was like, wait, those are the bad things? And I'm not saying those things aren't bad, but when you say all of the bad things, I'm like, did he murder and rape children? Like, all of the bad things, and those are the bad things he lists. Like, this guy is either completely pandering to cancel culture, or he's completely brainwashed by cancel culture. Those are the bad things. Okay.
That's it. Those are all the bad things.
All the bad things. He's racist and sexist. Like, you think about anything he could have said right after that. He's all of the bad things. He's a New York Jets fan. Right? He could have said anything after that, and he went with, those are the baddest things in the world, being a racist and a sexist. What about being a mass murderer, right?
Well, he's going to get to that.
No.
in the kitchen
Well, not a mass murderer.
and make me some pie.
Ableist.
Dude, I can't.
Oh, he's ableist.
He's all of the bad things. He's racist, sexist, and ableist. Oh, okay. Those are the bad things. I'm going to go around punching children now. Like,
But handicap people like this. I mean, making them compete against each other just for our amusement.
And classes.
Oh, wow.
Oh, class.
class.
That's the worst.
I'm going to go around punching people. And for every poor person I punch, I'm going to punch a rich person. And when people say, why are you punching people? You go, hey, you can't say anything. At least I'm not a classist.
Yeah.
Poor people being arrested. What a rare occurrence.
Basically, if you're a member of any sort of marginalized group whatsoever, Cartman almost certainly either hates you or somehow thinks you're less important than he is. But Cartman's hatred of non-cis white hetero males is also accompanied by a disregard for social norms in general. Sure, he's frequently and casually homophobic.
What the is up with that? That's gay.
But at the same time, he often exhibits an ambiguous sexual identity and sexuality. He's been known to wear clothes that transgress gender binaries, and in one episode, he attempts to prank Butters by filleting him in his sleep.
I took a picture of his wiener in my mouth.
He has also appeared to engage in sexual relationships with older men, and don't forget the time he got rich as a Christian musician by—
Yeah, that's another thing you should keep in mind. He got rich. Cartman got rich, made a lot of money by becoming a Christian preacher.
All of this is dropping context, right? So he showed the scene. He's like, oh, he's had sexual relations with older men. So that he shows him in bed with Ben Affleck, right? That's the taco flavored kisses episode where his hand was pretending to be Jennifer Lopez. So Jennifer Lopez was the one with Ben Affleck. That was the joke. And the joke was Cartman was accidentally being gay when Cartman would hate that. And that was the same thing as the Butters thing, right? That's the joke. Cartman would hate that, but he's accidentally doing that because he's a dumb, stupid kid. And that's where a lot of the humor from Cartman comes from. It's not saying, hey, Cartman's funny because he's awesome. It's saying Cartman's funny because he's so stupid he doesn't realize how stupid he is. That's the joke.
I just remembered something. Earlier you said Cartman resembles a hedonistic right winger. And I think I recall the South Park guys saying that Cartman is inspired by, what's his name? The guy from All in the Family, Archie Bunker. I think like that was like one of the main inspirations for Eric Cartman.
Well, you can trace Eric Cartman to Homer Simpson and Peter Griffin.
Well, I think South Park came out before Family Guy, though. But I could see the Homer Simpson comparison.
Right. I'm not saying that they were inspired by that. I'm saying it's all in the same sort of similar realm of characters.
Yeah.
erotic love for Jesus.
I want to get down on my knees and start pleasing Jesus. I want to feel his salvation all over my face.
But Cartman's biggest transgression of social norms is the lack of value he puts on individual human life. Despite his mother's unwavering love, Cartman doesn't see her as a properly autonomous being.
Pause it. This is the biggest thing I think this video is missing here, right? And we'll get to the Rand stuff, which is a huge, I'll talk about that later. But the biggest misunderstanding is he's not even referencing the one episode where that was addressed and we really got into Cartman's character. The entire reason Cartman is the way he is because a codependent relationship was fostered by his mother, because his mother didn't have anyone else in her life, and she saw him in a second-handed way and needed his love and approval above all else. So she fostered a narcissist through codependency. So this video is confusing psychology for philosophy. Cartman has no overriding philosophy. Cartman just has a narcissistic psychology because of that relationship his mother created. And she even realized it in the episode and tried to get rid of him, but then she realized she couldn't do it. And was the whole point. Is that's why Cartman is the way he is. I wonder if they've even seen that episode.
Yeah, it really does make you think how much they, one, know about South Park, and two, like that didn't even click with me at first when watching this. That's a really good point. But then two, yeah, they clearly don't know anything, as we'll get into. They don't know anything about Ayn Rand, or they deliberately go out of their way to represent her, as you guys will see.
I went with her.
And it's not just his mom he thinks he should be allowed to murder either. He's willing to kill Cal just to get out of detention.
I'm killing you, but unfortunately I could only afford a wiffle bat, so it's going to take a while.
At his most extreme, Cartman's willing to transgress just about every rule of civilized society.
The Somalian Pirates episode was one of my favorites.
He infects Cal with HIV as revenge.
He purposely infected me with his HIV virus.
Is that true, Eric? Did you give Kyle AIDS?
Well, he was being a dick, and then he's a big tattletale going around talking crap about me.
He convinces a gullible Butters the world has ended so he can attend Cal's birthday party.
You best wait for the radiation levels to go down. Probably next week sometime. After Saturday.
He gets every adult in South Park arrested on a spurious charge of sexual abuse.
All you gotta do is call the police and say that your parents both molested you.
And during his brief stint as a ginger, he attempts to have every non-redheaded child in the world killed.
We must gather together.
The episode that resulted in the fame of Coppercab. He I don't know how to describe him, but he became a commentator, but he got famous because he was the guy that, made the video in response to this episode saying gingers have souls. And then he parlayed that fame into being a YouTuber.
Hey, good for him for that one, you know? And it's the video that was, you know, all about how bad Cartman is for being a racist. Like, that was what that episode was about. So it's just.
Every child who is not ginger and exterminate them.
But then, of course, there's Cartman's crowning act of nihilistic glory, the character's most memorable and definitively capital E evil scheme, his revenge on Scott Tenorman. Quick recap. Scott sold Cartman his pubes, so Cartman had Scott's parents killed and then fed their bodies to Scott in a chili.
I made you eat your parents.
And this all happened within sight of Scott's idols, Radiohead, because it's South Park, of course.
Jeez, what a little crybaby. You gonna cry all day, crybaby?
You know, everyone has problems. It doesn't mean you have to be a little crybaby about it.
This plot line, incidentally, is loosely based on Shakespeare's.
This is where I want to jump ahead, because he eventually he starts out by asking whether or not Cartman is a Max Stirner hero, and I don't know anything about Max Stirner to really counter, nor do I care to really defend Max Stirner here. So,
well, there's no need to defend him. I mean, it's what he says. Max Stirner hops from nihilism to egoism, which you can't do. You can't hop from nihilism to any value. Even calling Cartman's act towards Scott Tenorman nihilism is wrong. You can call it evil, but that seems to be the equivocation he's making here. He's equivocating nihilism and evil, and those two things are not the same thing. Nihilism may result in evil because it ends up being anti-life, but he's not even thinking in those terms. He's just saying anything evil is nihilism, and those aren't the two same things. They're not.
So this is where he where Wisecrack starts to say that, is Cartman a Randian hero? And I'll just start off by saying,
To the no, no. See, South Park's considered by many to be aligned with modern-day libertarianism, an ideology which prioritizes individual liberty above all other values. Fittingly, Parker even said that his main political belief is, don't tell me what to do. Now, I don't like Cartman.
Whatever, I do what I want.
So to understand Cartman,
Pause it.
to someone.
I just want to say that this is a prime example of the kind of poor critical thinking skills that lead you to a video like this. Now, I don't know if he's doing it on purpose. I don't know if he realizes he's doing it, but leave me alone and I do what I want are two completely different statements. I do what I want is a narcissism, right? It's whatever I want to do, I do. It doesn't matter. Leave me alone is just, it's not a statement of what I'm going to do or why I make my choices. It's a statement of how I want you to treat me. Those are two completely different things. I could say, leave me alone and I will be nice to you. Or I could say, leave me alone and I will punch you in the face, right? Or leave me alone and I will ignore you. There's nothing that follows from leave me alone that makes it equivalent to I do what I want. But this person is assuming, this guy is assuming that if people leave you alone, you're just going to do whatever you want. Yes, again, with the package dealing, I see one of the viewers said, and that's what it's a lot of. It's a lot of people have these assumptions in their head, which are perhaps more revealing of their own psychology or philosophy. I don't have time to sort out this guy's beliefs or psychology, but perhaps it's more revealing of the way he is, that perhaps if he was left alone, he would just do whatever he wants. Because I know when I'm left alone, I don't do whatever I want. Or perhaps you could say I do what I want, but I understand that I have the constraints of reality which guide my decisions and my values which guide my decisions. Because remember, Cartman's I do what I want is an emotionless, hedonist, narcissistic statement. It's not a statement of rational self-interest.
exactly.
One who's often associated with modern-day libertarianism, Ayn Rand. Rand rejected the libertarian movement of her day, considering it to be too close to anarchy and calling libertarians hippies with the same derision as.
At least he was honest enough to mention that Rand rejected the libertarians.
Well, 100%, but he does the same thing here where it's a surface level comparison. Oh, well, Cartman didn't like hippies and Rand didn't like hippies.
Yes.
So they're both similar. So I'm similar to anyone who doesn't like hippies because I don't like hippies because I saw them when I was at Ithaca College and I didn't like them. Like, I'm similar to anyone else who's a fan of EC3. Like anyone else who watches the narrative, I'm similar to. Like it doesn't follow.
Yeah, it's a very superficial common trait between the two.
As our cartoon friend.
Goddamn hippie!
Whoa!
She preferred to identify as radical for capitalism, which sounds like a shirt an Ivy League lacrosse player named Brad.
And to that, I got to play this really quick.
Bradford might wear while offering you scotch out of a human skull at his Freemason Society headquarters.
Yeah, so
that's
classic
not what the Ivy League's like anymore. Has anyone seen the Ivy Leagues nowadays with their safe spaces and everything? Like that's like a 70s, 50s, 60s, 80s perspective on the Ivy League. That's from the 20th century. That doesn't apply anymore.
And even like the counter to, you know, the so-called left is mostly, from what I see, it's mostly MAGA nationalist right, not a desire for radical capitalism.
Anyway, Rand was a novelist and philosopher best known for writing the very, very heavy Atlas Shrugged. Her philosophy is less nuanced than Stirner's and isn't taken too seriously by most academic scholars. But that doesn't make her not.
Yeah, because academic scholars don't take it seriously, therefore you shouldn't take it seriously.
Right. Also, less nuanced. Maybe it's because you don't see the nuance. I mean, I personally think there's a lot of nuance in it.
Well,
but I'm dumb.
As we'll see, they're going to take quotes from books like The Fountainhead and drop a ton of context.
Not interesting. Her beliefs were rooted in ethical egoism or rational self-interest, arguing that a heroic man's
rational self-interest. Does Cartman, Eric Cartman, strike you as someone who's rationally self-interested?
I don't think he's within the realm of rationality. Like I said, hedonism and emotionalism when I think of Cartman.
There's an episode of South Park that I think really undermines this entire argument. And it's the episode where at the end, Cartman starts to ponder to himself, maybe I should start taking my life more seriously and thinking about the person I want to become. And then Cartman's future self shows up and says, Eric, this is the day you turn it all around. You start studying hard, you avoid drugs and alcohol, and you stop eating junk food, and then you grow up to start your own time travel company. And then Cartman responds by saying, fuck off. You know what? Just for that, I'm going to do all the drugs I want, eat all the junk food I want, because whatever, I do what I want. He runs off, and then his future self morphs into a fat slob and says, God damn it. And like, is that something like a Howard Rourke or a John Galt or a Dagny Taggart would do when confronted with, oh, this is what you could become if you really set your mind to it? Nah, fuck it. I'm just going to do what I want.
It's incredibly secondhanded to even have your future self tell you to do something and you don't do it just because it's somebody else telling you.
Exactly.
greatest purpose is pursuing.
Now, the counter to that is, well, throughout the episode, like the parents hired actors to pretend to be the kid's future self. I don't remember exactly how the episode goes, but it's like Cartman's like, when he wants to be, he's genuinely curious and then can put his focus, like as illustrated with the Scott Tenorman episode, he really puts a lot of thought in how he's going to get revenge on Scott Tenorman. Yet his future self says, yeah, look, this is the day you turn it around. And, you know, you should really think about what you want to become. He just says, well, screw that. I'm just going to act out of spite and deliberately engage in acts that are destructive.
Well, that's the narcissism of it, right? And but again, that's the joke, right? Again, that's the joke of Cartman. They took the basic premise of Cartman. Cartman is so fundamentally flawed that he does stuff that he thinks is smart, but it's actually stupid. And yeah, generally, like, you know, John Locke from Lost, don't tell me what I can't do. Generally, we kind of, as libertarians, as objectivists, have this sort of, like, I'm going to figure out what I want on my own. But when that goes into second-handedness, like Cartman did, it becomes destructive. And that's the joke of the point is, yeah, the whole episode seems to be your parents telling you what to do and manipulating you, that you don't stop to think and assess that maybe this is actually reality. And that's where the humor comes in, that subversion of expectation of Cartman and the audience.
his own happiness. Rand thought people ought to have the freedom to take all the actions required by the nature of a rational being for the support, the furtherance, the fulfillment, and the enjoyment of his own life. What sounds suspiciously like Cartman's amusement park scheme, or the time he fakes Tourette's so he can finally say whatever he wants with impunity.
Tampon! Tampon dick shit!
In both cases, it's all about him and his desires, regardless of how they affect others. Unlike Stirner's egoism, which encourages free individual thinking and self-constructed values, Rand's own creed is pretty prescriptive. The true Randian has very little intellectual wiggle room. She even started a cult following where the first rule was, Ayn Rand is the greatest human being who has ever lived.
Okay, I have a really big problem with that right there because, I mean, stupid or liar, that just is liar. Like, that never happened. And somebody might watch this video, if anyone got this far in the video, which I doubt, but somebody might watch that and take that seriously. Now, his response is going to be, well, it's an obvious joke, but that's just deflection away from the fact that he's going to put this forward and try to make people think that it's true. And it's not. It's very deceitful. It's very manipulative.
Yeah, I remember telling you, like, I often try to give people that I even strongly disagree with a benefit of doubt. Like you've always heard that saying, like, don't attribute malice that could be attributed to stupidity or ignorance. Yeah. And then I said, yeah, this video is either incredibly ignorant or incredibly dishonest. And I'm leaning on the side of dishonest, which I'll explain later. And you said this is actually a game that Adam Carolla plays.
Yeah, Adam Carolla plays a game on his podcast where he calls it Stupid or Liar. And when people say stuff, he's like, you always have to think about, are they being stupid or are they being a liar? When we create these categories like stupid or liar, it's funny, right? It's funny for comedic effect, and Adam Carolla is a comedian, and that's why he does it. But I would say this video is a mix of both. You know, we've seen the very shallow surface level thinking. So there is an element of stupidity in this video, but there's clearly also an element of intentional misportraying as well. So I would say it's both. And sometimes it can be helpful to say which it is because you're trying to figure out what the intentions of the person are, but it's very clear what the intentions of this video are. It's to destroy South Park and to destroy Ayn Rand.
Rand depicted her ethical egoism as most compatible with the capitalist pursuit of wealth. And unlike Stirner, who harbored loose, non-hierarchical views, Rand's ethos is pretty explicitly hierarchical. From her early days, she warned fervently against celebrating the common man. As cultural critic Lisa Dugan,
the common man? Actually, let's get through this quote first.
Writes in her book, Mean Girl, Ayn Rand and the Culture of Greed, Rand's novels present superior characters and eroticize their contempt for and cruelty toward inferior others. She presents readers with her ideal capitalist, a haughty individualist with no need for the collectivism of government unions or human solidarity.
Is that true? Did Rand present characters that had nothing but contempt and cruelty toward, inferior or common people?
So again, this is an equivocation between common and inferior, right? And without going into too much depth, because I could point to the entire character of Eddie Willers, right? When we're talking about levels of different ability. So anyone can go look that up if they want to. But I would say there's contempt for people who are worse than them, but they're morally worse. They're morally worse because they want to steal from other people. They want to destroy other people, right? She shows them having contempt. Dagny has contempt for James because James wants to destroy him. Rourke has contempt for Tui because Tui wants to destroy him. And that is valid contempt. But the way this quote portrays it and the way this quote is being used is as if they walk around with this contempt for all other human beings. And it's just not true. And this will come up again and again in this video, but I'll refer to, the scene from Fountainhead, which is referenced in Mad Men, where, Tui's like, well, Rourke, now that we're alone, just tell me what you think of me. And Rourke says, but Tui, I don't think of you. And that's really what it is. It's not contempt. And I think a lot of people who are secondhanded take that, oh, you don't think of me? I'm not important to you. They take that as contempt because, oh, not acknowledging me that's contemptful behavior. But it's just, why would somebody think of you? Why would Rourke think of the person trying to destroy him? And that was referenced in Mad Men in the scene where the Ben Feldman's character gets in the elevator with Don Draper, who's described in an early season as a Randian hero. And Ben Feldman asks, like, what do you think of me? And Don Draper's just like, I don't think of you. And maybe we're supposed to see that as Draper being mean or contemptful, but I don't think so. I think it's just like, I think it's supposed to be a statement on Ben Feldman's character, who's this young guy trying to make it, and he's too worried about what other people think of him.
Especially when you consider Atlas Shrugged. The bad guys in Atlas Shrugged, they're not common men or
Right.
social inferiors. A lot of them are people who are in elite positions of power, like corrupt business people, corrupt intellectuals, corrupt politicians. Meanwhile, I think a scene that somewhat debunks this is the scene where Cheryl Brooks comes to Dagny Taggart in the end, or toward the end, and Dagny shows benevolence toward her, whereas before she was treated with contempt by her own husband, James Taggart.
Well, I think all three of those characters, Eddie Willers, Tony the Wet Nurse, and Cheryl, directly contradict that and directly refute this point, where you look at the way they're treated by these characters. They're treated very sympathetically. They're seen as tragic victims of this culture war that these people are being forced to fight that they don't want to fight. And you could even argue Peter's girlfriend in the Fountainhead is treated the same way by the author, by Rand, as you see the sympathy for her by the way her mother and Peter treat her. Catherine Halsey.
Now, Cartman might not be as
But Lisa Dugan said it, so we know it's right.
Well, this guy, look, this is something this guy does in this video the whole time. I'm not even sure this guy has read Rand. It seems like he's read this book about Rand and he's just quoting that. It seems like he's read other people's commentaries on Rand and he's using that rather than his own direct first-handed look at Rand.
act as Rand's heroes, whose classic masculinity was always described in very horny detail. But he seems a little like a circle-shaped version of a Randian hero. He
says it right there. He seems like a Randian hero, so
certainly sees
Must be
himself
true.
as superior to those around him, and lauds his personal power over those he finds inferior for any reason, from their race to their size.
Race war!
now, isn't this debunked by, and I hate to spoil anything for anyone out there, but there's a scene in Atlas Shrugged where they're demanding that John Galt become the dictator economic planner, and he refuses to do it. Doesn't this kind of debunk this whole point that, Randian heroes, they just seek power over others like an Eric Cartman?
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's a scene that so many people miss, right? They cherry pick what they want out of it. And you want to talk about something that's similar. I talked about before how that Trey Parker quote of "leave me alone" is supposed to be similar to "I do what I want," right? "Leave me alone" is more similar to John Galt saying, "get out of my way, get out of the way." Those two things are more similar than anything. And he doesn't even get that.
Race war! Race war! Race war's on, everybody!
And sure, he's very recently seemed to care more about his friendships after only 24 years on the air. But still, he's typically rejected most forms of human solidarity. He only expresses interest in social movements when he can use them to his own benefit.
What is that? That's Cartman's new transgender bathroom. Cartman's a girl now? He's not a woman. He's not a man. He is something that you'll never understand. But he would die for me.
Or to advance his own reputation.
He's lying. Make him show you his phone.
Unfortunately, that'd be a breach of my civil rights. But I can assure you, nobody respected you girls' poignant protest more than I did.
Incidentally, Rand's heroes were initially based on a literal child murderer whom a young Rand found super sexy. The man, William Hickman, proclaimed at his trial that "I am like the state. What is good for me is only right," which Rand described as the best and strongest expression of a real man's psychology I ever heard. And if that real man murders kids, so be it.
So Ayn Rand was pro-murder, apparently.
This critique with this Hickman thing it's so old. It's such a straw man. Like, I hate to even acknowledge these kind of things because, look, she wrote this in her personal journal, right? And now we can we can ask questions about, is it moral that somebody even published her personal journals? It certainly was a rhetorical mistake to publish this one. But here's the thing, not to be defending anyone, because I'm not, and I want to be clear about that. I'm not defending anyone. But if we're talking about most people being mixed, isn't there good things and bad things to say about everyone? And are we really going to throw out an entire philosophical system because someone may have had an epiphany or a realization based upon a statement made by somebody who was a terrible person?
Yeah, from what I've read about this is that the character was an inspire, or the Hickman was an inspiration for a character of a novel that actually never got published, and it was when Rand was in her early 20s. So yeah, like you said earlier, this is a total straw man. And she, even in her journals, I guess, said that yeah, Hickman was a total monster and a degenerate, but some of the ways the public reacted to him made her think certain things to write in a potential novel.
Right. And it goes back to the shifting culture, right? She literally wrote something in a journal, a private journal, right? Think about that for a second. Did she live in the age of cancel culture? Did she live in the age of social media where everything is public? Did she ever expect everything to be public? So she thought that, and she wrote that where she thought nobody would ever see it except for herself. And now it's everywhere and it's used, and it goes, oh, child murderer. Oh, Rand. Oh, they're associated, therefore bad.
Yeah, and apparently Hickman was the inspiration for all of the heroes. I guess in Atlas Shrugged and the Fountainhead.
I was a Chris Benoit fan, dude. Like, I loved Chris Benoit. So do I now support double murder homicide? Like a double murder suicide? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a really good point. But I think the fact, again, that he's going out of his way, and he's going to do this again, he goes out of his way to cherry pick things in her personal diary, as you mentioned, yet he misses so many telling quotes from Rand that would debunk much of this analysis.
Apparently, the idea that what's good for me is right certainly sounds like Cartman to a T.
I'm going around making the world a better place for you. You're making it a better place for you. Right? That's what superheroes do.
And that fourth grade sadist's most devious plots certainly follow what Dugan described as Rand's hero's libido-infused
Citing Dugan again.
desire for heroic individual achievement. Cartman also shares these guys' so-called contempt for social inferiors and indifference to their plight. For Rand's heroes, individual achievement meant capitalist success and domination, no matter the cost. That's a far cry from
no matter the cost.
Stemmer's rejection of private property.
It sounds like he edited in that audio later. It's a different audio quality, and it's just a voiceover. It's very strange.
Rand's views on life best apply to those whose fantasies of success and domination include no doubt or guilt. Sound familiar?
I realize now that even though you
So
might
can you pause it for a second? He's making a claim that Rand's philosophy best applies to people whose fantasies of success and domination, right? That's what he's saying. Kirk, can I ask you, do you have fantasies of dominating other people? I don't mean sexually. I just mean in life, being superior to other people and controlling other people. Do you have those fantasies?
I have zero desire to do any of that.
First of all, that's way too much effort, right? That's way too much stress. Second of all, I don't think about it at all. It doesn't come into my head. I just think about, like, what am I trying to accomplish this day? What do I think is important? And how do I achieve that? I never think about, look, dude, I teach, right? I teach high school. I don't think of myself as superior to them. I think I have a level of authority that the state has given me in order to maintain control of the room, but I don't think I'm a better person than them. I don't think I have power over them. I don't enjoy having power over them. I deal with them as an equal as much as I can in order for things to work. I only exercise my power and authority pragmatically when it's necessary to increase the amount of learning in the room. I never think of that dynamic like that.
Yeah, and this is something that I've observed when you watch shows like Game of Thrones and you see the people in positions of power and they're very miserable. They can't really, like you see this with Tyrion Lannister, in that he wants to kind of live his own life, but his dad wants to arrange marriages for him and whatnot. And I've thought about this about people like Kim Jong-un before, like, is someone like a Kim Jong-un, is it really possible for him to ever really be happy being the dictator of a country when, especially considering that they're poor. Like, he's never going to enjoy like a day at Disneyland or a nice meal to eat. And he's probably constantly having to worry about getting overthrown, getting assassinated, other foreign threats. It's a miserable existence.
100%, 100%. When you have that many people depending on you, right? There's a difference between being like a teacher and a coach where you're teaching people to be independent and work on their own. But when you have that many people depending on you, it's miserable.
Yeah.
Something bad, you can still get caught later.
Oh, Jesus.
Cartman certainly pursued.
I remember hearing this also about the King of France during the French Revolution, and that he never really wanted to be king. And again, he had to marry Marie Antoinette because it was kind of an arranged marriage to set up some alliance with another. I don't remember the details, but.
Well, yeah, and now this goes to what we were saying about the Hickman thing, right? Oh, well, we can't say anything good about Hickman because he was a child murderer. How dare you have any sympathy for the aristocrats in the ruling class back in the day? They were oppressing everyone. That's the whole point. The whole point is under capitalism and freedom, it got better for everybody.
You're goddamn right.
Such guiltless ends in his various entrepreneurial ventures, from starting a crack baby athletic league to opening a covert junk food business at Fat Camp. Cartman's singular lack of empathy also makes sense in a Randian context. As Rand journaled about her ideal hero, he had never learned the process of thinking about other people. Again, we've heard that.
So I think that quote comes from the Fountainhead. And again, this is another very conveniently cherry-picked quote. This comes at the end of chapter 1 after Howard Rourke had a debate and argument with the dean. And it's all about second-handedness, about how the dean wants Rourke to respect tradition, quadrant tradition, respect his intellectual superiors. And Rourke's just like, yeah, I don't care. There's a very telling quote. It's like, that's true. I don't care whether you agree with me or not. He said it so simply, not so offensive. It sounded like a statement of the fact that he had noticed puzzled for the first time. You don't care what others think, says the dean, which might be understandable, but don't you care to even make them think as you do? And Rourke says no, but that's monstrous. Is it? Probably. I couldn't say. And that's kind of the end of the interview. And then after that, Howard Rourke is pondering how someone like a dean, like what's the source of their thinking when it comes to issues like that. And then eventually he knew the source of his actions. He could not discover theirs. He did not care. He had never learned the process of thinking about other people. And so they cherry picked that one sentence to imply that Ayn Rand did not care about things like compassion or empathy.
Well, it's also cherry picking outside of romanticism, right? Like Howard Rourke in reality can't exist, right? This whole idea of literally not thinking about other people, not having any relationships, not having any connections, right? That's not how the real world works, but he's created that way as a character to make a point about the creator in the independent man. That is the point of Howard Rourke in that scene. Contrasting Rourke with the dean, who all the dean does is think about other people. Rourke doesn't. He never learned that process where that's the only process the dean knows. That's the point of that scene, and that's the point of the book and why that character is created. He's not meant to be a real human being.
Bogenhagen says, here's a bad drinking game. Take a shot every drop of context.
That's part of why I'm straight edge. If I drank based upon the way people are, I would be perpetually drunk.
That one before.
This is a serious issue, Eric. What you're doing is very offensive.
Me? You're the one talking about killer titties.
Rand added that her hero is also defined by indifference, and that infinite, calm contempt is all he feels for the world and for other men who are not like him. Cartman might.
So yeah, that quote came from, I looked it up. It came from the journals of Ayn Rand. And this just, again, goes to show like how selective they are with the cherry picking, because if you just read a few paragraphs after this, because it's part of when Ayn Rand talks about the character Howard Rourke, a few paragraphs later, she says about Rourke, if he cannot get the right to do the work as he wants it done, well, then he'll take a $15 job as a common worker and wait and work for his chance. Because the rewards of success as such, money, ease, and fame, mean nothing whatever to him, his life has to be real. His life is his work. He will do his work as he wants it done, the only way he can enjoy it, or not at all, and perish in the battle, because the secondhand consolations most people get out of life have no meaning for him. He will not compromise. He will not compromise by building inferior buildings, nor by pretending adherence to the prejudices of those in power to gain their favors and their jobs. He will be himself at any cost, the only thing he really wants out of life. And deep inside of him, he knows that he has the ability to win the right to be himself. Consequently, his life is clear, simple, satisfying, and joyous, even if very hard outwardly. If you read that, if you go on to read that, that undermines their entire analysis of how Cartman is a Randian hero.
Well, you're 100% correct. And the most important thing, again, is not to drop the context of this being a journal. So there's all those words you said. And I'm gonna be honest, I've never read any of that before. I haven't read all of her journals because, first of all, I'm not interested in reading her journals because they're her journals for the reasons I'm about to say. So she says one word. She says the word contempt, which I don't think was a good word choice. I don't, because I've never seen that in any of her novels. I've never seen that contempt in any of her novels. I've never seen the word in any of her novels, in any of her other writing. In fact, I called, after watching this video, somebody I know with an eidetic memory who I consider one of the smartest people I've ever met, and he didn't know the quote. So if that quote is that not important, why is that being emphasized? Because we're going through with a fine-tooth comb to cherry pick one thing that looks bad. And Rand obviously herself knew it wasn't a good word. She never used it again. She never used that phrase again. I mean, look, if we looked at the pre-writing of every piece of art, movies, television, books, what would we get? Did you know that in Avengers Endgame, they weren't even going to have Iron Man say, "I am Iron Man," before he snaps? They had to have one of the grips or something on set tell him to say it because they didn't even think of it. But we still herald the Russo brothers as amazing when they missed the most obvious punctuation ever. Not saying I agree with the scene, but it doesn't, you can't cherry pick like this, especially when it was never intended to be public.
Yeah, and then going back to what I was saying about Cartman, they mentioned earlier about the Cartman just swimming in money, and they mentioned Cartman will try to get money and short-term pleasure at any cost, including being a Christian preacher. And when you consider again that Ayn Rand was an atheist, and that objectivism is an atheist philosophy, and then you can add all that stuff about Rourke, about how he doesn't compromise even for money or prestige or fame or any of that, that just debunks this whole notion that Cartman is an Ayn Rand hero, and further shows that they're very selective with how they cherry pick. They just cherry pick this one random sentence in the Fountainhead and then this one random sentence in her journal. Whereas if you read more of her work, it's very easy to recognize that Cartman is not a Randian hero. I don't even like using the term Randian.
Yeah. And to be fair, I will say that a lot of so-called objectivists also miss this point about profit, where they think the profit motive is what should be guided above all. And they think profits are like an indication of morality. Like if you make more money, you're necessarily good. And if you make less money, you're necessarily bad. Profits are a reward you can get sometimes, but not always, right? The goal of doing something is not the profits. The goal of doing something is not the money. And Rand never said it was. She just said in a rationalist, capitalist system, you would be rewarded for doing well. And that doesn't mean you'll always be rewarded for doing well. You can create good art and there's no market for it. You can create a good product and there's no market for it. It just means that the market isn't in itself evil, whereas other people assume the market is evil. And again, a lot of objectivists make that confusion too, that money necessarily equals good. As it said in the Francisco money speech in Atlas Shrugged, money is a tool. It is neither good nor bad. It's what you do with it and how you treat it.
Speaking of Francisco, even he contradicts this whole narrative, considering that he was a genius, was wealthy, and he inherited a successful business from his family. And if he wanted to, he could have schmoozed with the politically connected and maintained his wealth and gotten a lot more wealth and a lot more power, but he decided to go on strike.
Yeah. Somebody in the chat says rationalist capitalist system. If I said rationalist, I didn't mean to. I obviously meant rational capital system. I was trying to distinguish between the current system we have and an actually capitalist system.
Rarely stay calm, but contempt is somewhat his middle name. Contempt for girls.
Apologize. That's not what I said, you dumb bitch.
For Jewish people.
Mel Gibson says in the movie, Jews are the devil.
And so this again, so going back earlier when he said that Cartman is a racist, and he is, this also further shows the very selective cherry picking, because if you just Google Ayn Rand racism, you'll find some quotes where Ayn Rand condemned racism and said it was the lowest, most crude form of collectivism. That's all you really need. I think that alone totally is enough reason to just throw this entire analysis into the garbage, and just shows again how dishonest I think they are with how they cherry pick and select quotes while missing a lot of quotes that would debunk this nonsense.
Well, like I said, I think the whole way to throw this out is, I mean, he doesn't even understand what nihilism is. That's why I question how many people actually even got this far in the video. But yes, that is one of those moments where you're like, yeah, okay, we're done.
Well, apparently they're getting rid of the dislike button soon, but we can still see here it's overwhelmingly liked. 9,000 likes, only 300 dislikes. So I think there is a lot of agreement with this video from people who probably don't really know much about either South Park, philosophy, Ayn Rand, and so on.
More people.
We would tell your parents to shop at nicer places, but your mom is so poor she can't even pay attention.
In this way, much of what makes Cartman pretty misaligned with Stirner's nihilism puts him pretty squarely in the realm of Randian acolyte. Rand's heroes may have never fed someone their own parents, and
Rand's heroes may never have fed someone their own parents. Maybe that's a glowing clue, neon bright light on the Vegas Strip clue that Cartman is not an Ayn Rand hero. Because if you watch that episode, if anything, if Cartman resembles anything close to Rand's characters, it would be a James Taggart in that episode. Because what is Cartman seeking to achieve in that episode? He's seeking the suffering, misery, and humiliation of Scott Tenorman, which in all fairness still is not a good comparison, because James Taggart sought to destroy a hero, a man of the mind and productive ability like a John Galt, whereas Cartman's just trying to get revenge on another piece of garbage. Scott Tenorman was a piece of garbage, did not deserve to have his parents fed to him, but nevertheless, he still had a similar goal. And what does he get to do at the end is lick the tears of Scott Tenorman and enjoy his humiliation.
Yeah, I mean, I would say James wants to just destroy anyone who's good, basically. But obviously, the ultimate good is gold. But yes, an excellent point.
That's really all I have to say about this video. Do you have any more to add?
No, I mean, look, this is something I talk about on the show all the time, on the show being my podcast, is the idea that, like, I have I'm not very interested in internet conversation anymore. It's a lot of just surface level conversations, trading back and forth to get immediate hits, immediate likes, immediate attention. There's no real value to it. It doesn't really enrich my life. Like, I watch a video like this and I'm like, I don't care. Like, I literally have the Howard Rourke, Don Draper reaction to this, where I don't think of you. I don't know who this guy is. I never heard of him before. I've since learned about his, reading of literature in the thug character, and that's supposed to be funny. It doesn't do anything for me.
By the way, I just noticed your shirt says Reardon Metal. That's a nice shirt.
Thank you. It's Motive Power. Check out his story. He's got some good stuff in there.
So that's all we're going to do for the South Park angle of the show. I also want to bring you on today to maybe talk about yourself. So you host the Welcome to the Midside podcast, which has been going on for a few years. I've appeared on that show a few times. It's a really good show. I highly recommend everyone check it out. You also published a novel, which in 2 days, again, this is on Amazon. If you want to read The Cut, it's called The Cut. What is the cut about? Because you're a huge fan of Zack Snyder, and I've never met anyone who is as big of a fan as a director as you are, Zack Snyder.
Yeah, so I was really involved in the Release the Snyder Cut movement because I've been writing and analyzing about Zack Snyder for years. So when I first saw 300, I fell in love with the movie, and I was like, this is amazing. And then I since watched his movies. You know, when Watchmen came out, I was like, wow, this is a really different ending than the graphic novel. And when you look at the significance philosophically of the different endings, it's incredibly interesting. And then I fell in love with Sucker Punch when I saw it in the theaters. And this was all, around the time I discovered Rand, but I got into Snyder before I discovered Rand. And this was all before the Man of Steel, all the DC stuff. So there was an influx with the DC stuff of all these people into the Zack Snyder fandom. And the whole Release the Snyder Cut movement, the conversation became about something that I think it actually was. If you look at Zack Snyder, he is, I don't say this lightly, he's close to a real life Randian hero, right? He made his money in advertising, and he didn't have to go into movies. He did it because he wanted to. And he worked in a studio system where they allowed him to do what he wanted. And he made deals with them where he said, I'll do studio cuts, theatrical cuts, if I can release my own cuts on home media. And that happened for a while. But then when he got involved with DC, so many politics happened that they rejected his work till eventually they fired him essentially from Justice League. And the whole conversation was not about, hey, here's an artist and the artist has a right to make what he wants to make. It wasn't about, Peter Keating had no right to do what he did to that housing project, right? He had no right to do what he did to Cortland. And Snyder's aware of this. There's a boat in Fountainhead. There's a boat in Zack Snyder's Justice League named Cortland. He put that in there. That's an intentional reference. At the beginning of Zack Snyder's Justice League, and I don't know if this was in there before in the original cut of it, there's a newspaper headline saying they're looking for an architect because there are no good architects left. Like, he is aware of these comparisons. He wanted to adapt the Fountainhead. What's up?
I didn't pick up on that part.
Yeah, well, go back and look it. You'll see it again. So these things are in there. He's aware of them. And no one had the conversation about, what was the creative artistic struggle? And, what exactly happened with Snyder is not my story to tell. That's his story to tell. But for me, the story of fictionalizing it and saying, let's take what happened and let's mythologize it, to use his language. Let's turn it into a myth about the creative process. And that's what I did. I took what happened and I read the rumors and I heard the behind the scenes stuff from, all the connections people had and, talking to people who talked to Snyder and talking to people who worked on set. And I pieced together a narrative, which I think is, reflective of reality in the abstract romantic sense to tell the story that mattered. That this is the story of an artist who had something good and rational to say, and it was destroyed for that reason. Because what they really want to do is they want to make Superman an altruist. They want to make him sacrifice. And that's the only way to make Superman worthwhile is if he suffers for our sins like Jesus. Whereas Snyder turned that on its head. And he had, Superman say, this is my world. You are my world. This is about fighting for what he sees as good in the world and making the world a better place for himself and all the people he cares about.
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about? Anything you want to plug?
Like you said, everyone can check out my podcast, Welcome to the Midside. It's wherever podcasts are streaming, or you can go to themidside.com/podcast. Check us out there. I have all the episodes up on our website. If you want to buy my novel, you can do so at themidside.com/thecut. There's all different options for purchasing it there. I'd love to hear from anyone. You can always reach out to me on Twitter or Instagram on the Midside. I don't tweet a lot these days because, like I said about social media, it doesn't really interest me. But you can always reach out to me via DM on either platform if you want to have a conversation. Or you can find our Discord channel. We got a Discord channel for Welcome to the Midside. You can find on themidside.com.
Yeah, so again, everyone check out Justin in the Midside. Really good stuff he puts out. And I'll put all your links when I get this on YouTube. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. My name's Kirk Wilcox for Justin Lesniewski. See you next time.